Alright, you magnificent bastards, welcome back. In the last part, Issei, the newly crowned Red Dragon Emperor of the Citri Peerage, saved Rias' Gremory, pissed off his rival, and proved to the entire underworld that Sona Citri's logic-driven team is a force to be reckoned with. He won the battle, but the war for his loyalty is just getting started. But forget the Fenix problem. That was just the warm-up act. Now, in Part 3, the stakes are going global. A renegade fallen angel with a god complex, a handful of stolen, legendary Excalibur fragments, and a fucking insane plan to reignite the Great War are all heading straight for Kuo Town. To stop him, the Citri Peerage is given command of the entire operation, but they're not the only ones on the hunt. Two powerful warriors from the church have just arrived on their doorstep, and they don't give a damn about devils getting in their way. Get ready for an impossible truce, a battle of faith versus logic, and the introduction of a rival so powerful he makes everyone else look like a child. This is the arc where Issei has to use his brain as much as his gauntlet, where the entire foundation of heaven is shattered by a single, devastating truth, and where the game board gets flipped over by the arrival of the White Dragon Emperor. This is Part 3 of What If Issei Joined the Citri Peerage, and trust me, after this, nothing will ever be the same. Peace, Issei discovered, was a noisy, complicated affair. In the weeks following the victory against Riser, his life at Kuo Academy had fundamentally changed. He was no longer just a background pervert. He was the Red Dragon Emperor, the hero of the raiding game. Students whispered his name in the hallways. Girls who wouldn't have given him the time of day were now offering him shy smiles and their lunch boxes. It was everything he'd ever wanted, and it was fucking exhausting. The rivalry between Rias and Sona had also shifted. Rias, free from her engagement, had launched a full-scale charm offensive. She'd accidentally bump into him between classes, offer to share her notes, and find any excuse to get close to him, all while throwing triumphant, playful smirks in Sona's direction. Sona, for her part, simply observed. She would watch Rias' blatant attempts at seduction, her expression unchanging, before assigning Issei an extra 3 hours of mind-numbing tactical study, reasserting her authority in her own cold, ruthlessly efficient way. His training had become a focused obsession, mastering the balance breaker. DxD pushed him relentlessly, and Tsubaki's combat sessions had only grown more intense, the lines between a brutal lesson and an intimate dance blurring with every sparring match. The brief illusion of peace shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. Emergency meeting, all members my office. Now. Sona's voice cut through their peerage comms link with zero preamble. Rias and her peerage were summoned moments later, a clear sign that this was serious. In the student council room, Sona stood before a holographic display showing the crests of the Devil, Angel, and Fallen Angel factions. I have just received a Priority 1 directive from my sister, Lady Seraphal and Lord Surzech, she announced, her voice grim. 3 days ago, a cadre of rogue priests led by the fallen angel cadre Cockabeel successfully stole 3 fragments of the legendary Holy Sword, Excalibur, from a secure Vatican vault. A diagram of the sword appeared. Intelligence suggests Cockabeel intends to merge the fragments here, in Kuo Town, a site with a delicate balance of power, in order to incite a new great war between the 3 factions. Ria's eyes widened. Start a war. Is he insane? All evidence points to yes, Sona replied flatly. She then looked directly at Rias. Due to the successful and efficient resolution of the Fenix matter and the significant political debt now owed to my house, Lord Surzech has seen fit to assign primary operational command of this incident to the Citri Peerage. The implication was a slap in the face. Gremory-san, you and your peerage will provide support and act only when and as I direct. Is that understood? Ria's jaw tightened, a flicker of her old pride flashing in her eyes, but she gave a stiff, formal nod. Understood. Before Sona could continue the briefing, there was a sharp, confident knock on the door. Tsubaki opened it to reveal 2 girls. One had blue hair cut in a sharp, asymmetrical style and a cold, hard look in her eyes. She carried a massive object on her back, wrapped in white cloth and chains. The other had long, light brown hair in twin tails and a bright, cheerful smile that seemed completely at odds with the tense atmosphere. The air in the room instantly grew heavy with the cloying, sharp scent of the holy, making every devil present flinch. We were told the devils in charge of this town could be found here, the blue-haired girl said, her voice devoid of warmth. She stepped into the room, her eyes scanning each of them with open disdain. My name is Zenobia Quarta. My partner is Irina Shidu. We are here on behalf of the church. Our mission is the retrieval of the stolen Excalibur fragments, Zenobia continued, her hand resting on the hilt of her wrapped weapon. We expect no interference from your kind. This is holy business. Any devil, stray or otherwise, that gets in our way will be considered an enemy of God and will be eliminated. Are we clear? The threat was naked, arrogant, and backed by a palpable aura of power. But Issei wasn't focused on her. He was staring at the other girl, at Irina's cheerful face, her energetic posture, the way she bounced slightly on the balls of her feet. His mind was racing, trying to connect a face from a decade ago with the one before him. The pigtails, the familiar, bright eyes. Irina, he whispered, the name feeling strange in his mouth after so long. Irina's bubbly expression faltered. She squinted at him, her head tilting. "Huh, do I know you?" Then her eyes widened in recognition. "No way, that stupid haircut, I scoon." "Is that you?" A brilliant smile lit up her face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Her smile was replaced by a look of pure, gut-wrenching horror as her senses finally registered what he was. The demonic energy, the scent of the abyss that clung to his soul. "No," she stammered, taking a step back as if he were a poisonous snake. "It can't be. I scoon, you're a devil." The accusation, sharp and horrified, hung in the air like the scent of ozone after a lightning strike. "You're a devil?" Irina Shidu's cheerful face was a mask of betrayal and disgust. To her, it was as if her childhood friend had just confessed to being a serial killer. Issei felt a pang in his chest, sharp and painful. He had faced down fallen angels and immortal devils, but the look of pure revulsion from his old friend was a wound he hadn't been prepared for. "Irina, wait, I can explain," he started, but the blue-haired girl Zenovia stepped in front of her, a protective, menacing barrier. "Focus, Irina," Zenovia commanded, her cold eyes never leaving Issei. "Your personal history with this creature is irrelevant. He is a devil. If he becomes an obstacle to the mission, I will cut him down. It is that simple." The tension in the room ratcheted up, the air thick enough to choke on. Kiba's hand drifted to the hilt of his sword. Akeno's smile became a predatory baring of teeth. Before the standoff could erupt into a full-blown conflict, Sona Citri stepped forward. Her presence was a wave of pure, cold logic that seemed to lower the temperature in the room. She completely ignored Issei and Irina's personal drama. "Zenovia Quarta," Sona said, her voice calm, and even as she addressed the clear leader of the two envoys. "Your aggressive posture is noted, but it is tactically unsound. Let us analyze the current strategic landscape." Zenovia scoffed. "There is nothing to analyze. You are devils. We are agents of the church. We are natural enemies." "An antiquated and inefficient viewpoint," Sona countered without missing a beat. "Our primary objective is Cockabeel and the stolen Excaliburs." "Your primary objective is Cockabeel and the stolen Excaliburs." A direct conflict between our factions at this juncture would be a catastrophic waste of resources, serving only to provide Cockabeel with the time and chaos he needs to achieve his goal of starting a new great war. "The data is unequivocal." She pushed her glasses up, her eyes glinting. "Therefore, I am proposing a temporary tactical alliance." The room went dead silent. Rias stared at Sona as if she had grown a second head. Zenovia actually laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "An alliance with filth. The Lord would never forgive such a blasphemy. We do not consort with the damned." "I am not asking for theological approval," Sona stated, her voice losing none of its composure. "I am proposing a non-aggression pact and a mutual intelligence-sharing agreement. Your faith is not a weapon that can calculate probability. I can. The odds of your two-person team successfully retrieving the swords while fending off a Cadre-class fallen angel and his followers are approximately 18%. The odds of your success while also fighting a defensive war against two full devil peerages dropped to less than 3%. She let the numbers hang in the air. However, with a temporary truce, where our forces operate independently but do not engage each other, your probability of success rises to over 60%. I do not care about your souls, I care about results. Choose the logical path, Zenovia Quarta. Zenovia was a zealot, but she wasn't a fool. Sona's cold, hard numbers had sliced through her dogma. She hated it. She hated every word of it, but she couldn't deny the truth. Fighting a war on two fronts was suicide. She looked at Irina, who was still staring at Issei, her expression a mess of conflict. Zenovia grit her teeth. The mission came first, always. "Fine," she bit out, the word tasting like poison in her mouth. "A truce. We will not attack you and you will not attack us. We will share any intelligence we gather on Cockabeel's location and forces. But we are not allies, we are not friends. The moment the Excaliburs are secured, this agreement is terminated, and if you get in our way, I will not hesitate." "A satisfactory outcome," Sona said with a curt nod. Zenovia gave Issei one last, venomous glare before grabbing Irina's arm. Let's go, Irina. We have work to do. She practically dragged the still-dazed girl out of the room. The moment the door closed, Rias let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She looked at Sona with a new level of awe. That was masterfully handled, Sona. It was the only logical move to make, Sona replied, already turning back to her holographic display, her mind moving on to the next phase of the plan. But Issei wasn't listening. He was staring at the door, the horrified look on Irina's face burned into his mind. The mission to stop a war had just become deeply, painfully personal. He had to face his past, his childhood friend, on a battlefield where they stood on opposite sides of a very thin, very fragile line. Human attachments are a liability, DxD's voice noted grimly in his head, especially when they come armed with holy swords. The truce, fragile as it was, changed the entire dynamic of the mission. Sona's operational briefing was now laced with a new layer of complexity. "We are no longer the only players on the board," she stated, her eyes sweeping over the assembled members of her peerage in the student council room. "The church envoys are now a volatile, independent variable. This is no longer just a hunt, it is a race. We must locate Cockabeel and the swords before they do. A direct confrontation between the church and a cadre-class fallen angel on this territory is a scenario we must avoid at all costs." Her strategy was a model of efficiency. She divided Kuo into a precise grid, assigning teams to conduct discrete, sweeping scans for hostile demonic and holy energy signatures. Saji was tasked with monitoring his packed network for any unusual rumors, while Tsubaki would lead a physical reconnaissance of abandoned industrial sites. Issei was assigned a patrol sector with Asia, but his mind was a million miles away. He couldn't shake the image of Irina's horrified face. His childhood friend, his first real friend, now looked at him like he was a monster. "She was just surprised, Issei-san," Asia said, trying to comfort him as they walked through the quiet evening streets. "I'm sure once she understands, she'll come around." "You think so?" Issei asked, though he didn't believe it. Irina was a devout believer. He was a devil. In her world, the math was pretty simple. He felt a familiar surge of frustration. He wanted to find her, to talk to her, to make her understand. But he knew Zenovia would see that as a trick, a breach of their fragile truce. It would just make things worse. He felt helpless, a pawn in a game far too big for him, and then Sona's voice echoed in his head. "Sentimentality is a weakness. Analyze the data, find a solution." He stopped dead in the middle of the street. A solution? He had been so focused on the emotional problem, he hadn't even considered the strategic one. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to think not like a heartbroken teenager, but like Sona. "Okay, analyze the data. Who is the enemy, Cockabeel, a cadre-class fallen angel? That means he's powerful, arrogant, and not afraid of a fight. What is his objective? To start a war. A big, bloody one between all three factions. What are his assets? The stolen Excalibur fragments and a team of rogue priests." So Issei's eyes snapped open. "This is all wrong." "What is Issei-san?" Asia asked, confused. "This," he said, gesturing around them. "This search. We're all sneaking around looking for him in the shadows, but why would he be hiding? He's not scared. He wants a confrontation. He wants to make a statement so loud that heaven and the underworld have no choice but to respond." The pieces started clicking together in his mind with a startling clarity. You don't start a war by hiding in a warehouse. You walk right out onto the biggest stage you can find, and you fire the first goddamn shot. He thought back to Sona's lectures on ley lines and magical nexuses in Kuo. There was only one location that fit the bill, a place of immense supernatural significance, a place that would guarantee an audience from all three factions, a place that would be the ultimate, undeniable provocation. He fumbled for his comms device. "President, come in, it's Issei." "Report," Sona's voice replied instantly. I have a theory," he said, his heart pounding. He half expected her to tell him to stick to his patrol route. "We're looking in the wrong places. Cockabeel isn't hiding the Excaliburs, he's bringing them to us." He took a deep breath and laid out his logic, trying to sound as clinical and precise as she did. His objective is maximum provocation. His psychological profile is one of extreme arrogance. The most logical staging ground for his attack isn't a hidden lair, but the single most magically significant and politically sensitive location in this entire territory. Kuo Academy. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Issei held his breath. When Sona finally spoke, the surprise in her voice was unmistakable. "Your hypothesis is surprisingly coherent, Hiyada-kun." He could hear the faint sound of her typing furiously. Cross-referencing with Cockabeel's known battle records and psychological profile, The probability of a direct assault on the academy aligns with the data. It is a high-risk, high-reward strategy he has favored in the past. You have identified the enemy's most likely course of action before our sensors detected a single trace of him. A moment later, her voice blared across the entire peerage network, sharp and decisive. All units, all previous orders are now void. Discontinue search and sweep operations immediately. I am issuing a new primary directive: secure and fortify Kuo Academy. The enemy is not running from us. He is waiting for us. I repeat, all forces converge on the academy now. Hiyada-kun has found our battlefield. Issei lowered his hand, a feeling of shock and pride washing over him. It was a completely different kind of rush from a power-up. He had used his head, he had made a difference with his mind. HMPH. For a creature driven entirely by hormones, that was almost intelligent, DxD noted with grudging respect. Don't let it go to your head. Issei ignored him, his gaze fixed on the distant silhouette of the school. He might not know how to fix things with Irina, but he finally knew how he was going to protect her. He was going to win. Kuo Academy transformed into a fortress. Under Sona Citri's precise and unrelenting command, the school grounds became a masterwork of defensive strategy. Intricate magic circles, glowing with a soft blue light, were etched into the earth by the Citri peerage, designed to sap the strength of any intruders. Rias and her team, now functioning as a disciplined support unit, helped erect powerful barriers at key choke points. It was a symphony of preparation, and Sona was its conductor. Hyodo Shinra, Sona's voice directed, pointing to the main school building on her holographic map. Take the roof. It is the highest tactical vantage point. Tsubaki, I need your mirrors deployed to deflect any preliminary aerial bombardments. Issei, you are the last line of defense. If anything breaks through the main barrier, you are the heavy artillery that brings it down. Go. The rooftop was cold, the wind whipping past them under the dark, moonlit sky. For a few minutes, they worked in silence, Tsubaki placing small, elegant mirrors at the corners of the roof that shimmered and then vanished from sight. The silence was a rare thing between them, usually filled with the sounds of combat and her sharp corrections. Senpai, Issei started, feeling a newfound confidence in the wake of his strategic breakthrough. Thanks, for the training, I mean, all the getting my ass kicked. It's the only reason I'm not completely terrified right now. Tsubaki paused, her back to him. My duty as the queen is to ensure the king's pieces are functioning at maximum capacity. You are operating at a suboptimal level. I corrected the deficiency. Her tone was as professional as ever, but Issei could detect something less severe beneath it. Still, you're amazingly strong, Senpai. I've never actually asked, what is your sacred gear? She was quiet for a long moment, and he thought she was going to ignore him. Then she turned, her expression unreadable in the dim light. You have earned the right to know. She held out her hand, and a small, ornate hand mirror materialized in it. My sacred gear is called Mirror Alice. It allows me to create duplicates of anything I can see. To demonstrate, she pointed the mirror at him. The surface shimmered, and stepping out from it, as silent as a ghost, was a perfect, glassy replica of Issei. It mimicked his shocked expression, moved when he moved, a flawless, soulless puppet. It can create illusions, reflect incoming attacks, and on occasion, create a temporary combatant based on an opponent it has reflected, she explained, the duplicate dissolving back into the mirror. Its primary weakness is that the mirrors can be shattered by a single, overwhelmingly powerful attack. That is why I value defense and teamwork. A single, well-placed mirror is fragile. A network of them supporting each other is a fortress. Issei stared, his mind racing, not with any perverted thoughts, but with pure, unadulterated awe for the strategic elegance of her power. Wow, he breathed. That's perfect. It's the ultimate tool for the way the president fights. Deception, misdirection, turning the enemy's strength back against them. It's incredible, Senpai. His admiration was genuine, his understanding of her power synergy with Sona's mind absolute. He wasn't just impressed by the strength of it, he was impressed by the intelligence of it. And for the first time since he had met her, Tsubaki Shinra smiled. It wasn't a smirk or a polite expression. It was a small, quiet, and genuinely warm smile that completely transformed her severe face, making her look breathtakingly beautiful. You are more perceptive than you appear, Hiyada-kun, she said, the honorific sounding less formal and more fond. The moment of connection, fragile and new, was abruptly shattered. A wave of malevolent, crushing power washed over the school, so immense and foul it felt like the sky itself was pressing down on them. A deep, wailing alarm, magical in nature, began to shriek across the grounds. Below them, a massive dome of shimmering, water-like energy sprang into existence, enveloping the entire academy in Sona's most powerful defensive barrier. Issei and Tsubaki looked up. Descending slowly from the black sky was a figure with 10 powerful jet-black wings, radiating an aura of madness and pure, destructive force. Cockabeel had arrived. Sona's voice, now laced with a steely, urgent tension, crackled over their comms link. "All units, battle stations, the target is on the field." Cockabeel descended into the center of the courtyard, the very ground seeming to groan under the weight of his malevolent power. He regarded the shimmering, water-like barrier Sona had erected with an amused smirk. "A cute little turtle shell, daughter of Citri," his voice boomed, projecting across the entire school. "But you can't hide in there forever." His gaze drifted up to the roof, locking onto Issei. "And the Red Dragon Emperor, I heard you sniffed out my plan. How delightful. It's been so long since I've had an opponent with a brain. This might just be fun." He didn't attack the barrier himself. With a lazy wave of his hand, the ground rippled and dozens of grotesque, multi-limbed monsters clawed their way out of the earth. At the same time, a figure dropped from the sky, landing in a crouch before him. A man with wild white hair and a manic, bloodthirsty grin. It was the stray exorcist, Fried Selzen, now clutching a twisted sword hilt that pulsed with an erratic, holy light. "Go play, my pets," Cockabeel purred. "Test the defenses." The monsters charged, slamming into the defensive lines being held by the combined peerages. At the same time, Fried Selzen became a blur of motion, his new Excalibur fragment granting him impossible speed. He zipped across the battlefield, his laughter echoing as he sliced through Sona's carefully laid magical traps. "All units, engage the summoned beasts," Sona's voice commanded. "Kiba Saji, contain the stray exorcist. Do not let him breach the inner perimeter." The battle was joined. Issei acted as fire support from the roof, launching powerful dragon shots to obliterate clusters of the hideous monsters. Below, the unlikely team of Citri and Gremory worked in near-perfect sync, a testament to their brutal training. But Fried was too fast. He dodged Kiba's swords and Saji's water whips with ease, his laughter growing more unhinged. He was about to break their line when two new figures crashed into the battlefield like avenging angels. "That sword is the property of the Holy Church, you filthy stray." Zenovia's voice rang out as she and Irina intercepted Fried, their own holy weapons drawn. A chaotic three-way duel of holy power erupted in the middle of the battlefield. Cockabeel watched the pandemonium from above, a look of utter boredom on his face. He clapped his hands together slowly, the sound magically amplified to a deafening thunderclap that brought all the fighting to a momentary halt. "Bravo, bravo," he called out, a mocking grin on his face. Such passion, such conviction, devils fighting to protect their territory, exorcists fighting to reclaim their trinkets. It's all so wonderfully pointless. He spread his 10 wings wide, basking in the attention. "You're all fighting and dying for causes, for masters, for a god who can't even hear you." He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that promised madness. "Don't you know?" he asked, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that every soul on the field could hear. "There's no one home upstairs, not anymore. God is dead." The words struck with more force than any physical blow. "He died in the last Great War, along with the original 4 Satans," Cockabeel continued, savoring every syllable. "Your prayers fall on deaf ears. Your faith is a monument to a corpse. Your entire system, your precious balance, is all built on one great cosmic lie." The devils were stunned into silence, but the effect on the 2 exorcists was catastrophic. Irina Shidu, the cheerful, devout girl, let out a small, choked gasp. Her sword wavered, her entire body trembling. Her faith, the cheerful, unshakable core of her entire being, had just been shattered into a million pieces. Zenovia reacted with pure, unadulterated rage. "Lies," she screamed, her voice cracking with desperation and fury. "Blasphemy from a follower of the dark. I'll cut out your tongue." She charged, not at Fried, but directly at Cockabeel, her fighting style devolving from precise swordsmanship into a wild, desperate frenzy. She was no longer a soldier, she was a zealot whose temple had just been desecrated. From his perch in the sky, Cockabeel laughed. It was a deep, hearty, and utterly insane sound. He had shattered their morale without throwing a single punch. The physical battle was secondary, he was already winning the war for their souls. In the command center, Sona Citri stared at her monitors, her face deathly pale. This wasn't just battlefield intelligence. This was a truth that could shatter the foundations of their entire world. All her strategies, all her calculations, were suddenly based on a false premise. The game had changed, and she was flying blind. Zenovia's charge was magnificent, suicidal, and utterly pointless. Fueled by shattered faith and pure rage, she moved like a tempest of holy steel, aiming to cut down the monster who had declared her god a corpse. Cockabeel merely sighed, a look of profound disappointment on his face. He raised a single finger, a sphere of dark, crackling energy condensing at its tip, ready to obliterate the foolish exorcist. So passionate, so fragile. Before the energy could be released, two things happened at once. A blur of motion, faster than anything Issei had ever seen, shot across the battlefield as Kiba Yuyudo intercepted Zenovia, tackling her out of the path of the attack. Simultaneously, a massive bolt of golden holy lightning, courtesy of Akaino, slammed down from the sky, forcing Cockabeel to divert his attention to defend himself. "Don't throw your life away for his lies," Kiba grunted, pinning the struggling, furious Zenovia to the ground. Cockabeel deflected the lightning with a wave of his hand, his expression shifting from boredom to genuine annoyance. "Teamwork? How utterly tedious. Fine, if you all insist on dying together, then allow me to oblige." He rose higher into the air, spreading his 10 wings. He brought his hands together, and a spear of pure, blinding light began to form, growing larger and more intense with every passing second. It was a weapon designed not to fight, but to annihilate. Sona's water barrier began to hiss and steam under the sheer pressure of the raw power being gathered. Everyone on the ground looked up in horror. They were out of tricks. They were out of time. Just as Cockabeel was about to unleash the attack that would have undoubtedly shattered the barrier and wiped them all out, a calm, clear voice echoed from the heavens. "Divide." In an instant, the colossal spear of light seemed to shrink, to wither. It halved in size, then halved again, until it fizzled out of existence with a pathetic little pop. Every eye on the battlefield turned skyward. Floating there, between Cockabeel and the school, was a new figure. He was encased in a suit of sleek white dragon armor, with brilliant, ethereal blue wings of light extending from his back. He radiated an aura of such immense, overwhelming power that it made Cockabeel's malevolent energy feel like a child's tantrum. "Albion," DxD's voice roared in Issei's mind, a sound of pure, undiluted, eons-old hatred. "The vanishing dragon, that bastard is here." Cockabeel stared, his face a mixture of shock and fury. "The White Dragon Emperor. What are you doing here, Vali? Did Azazel send you to interfere?" The figure in white armor, Vali, tilted his head. His voice was calm, almost bored, filtered through his helmet. "Azazel doesn't give me orders. I do as I please. And your little war is boring me." His glowing blue gaze drifted down, past Cockabeel, past the battlefield, and locked directly onto Issei. "I was just in the area when I felt the power of the Welsh dragon. I came to see how my fated rival was developing." There was a pause. "He's still so weak," Vali stated, his voice laced with genuine disappointment. "What a letdown." He then turned his attention back to the sputtering fallen angel Kadri. "You, on the other hand, are just a nuisance. Your plan is uninspired and your power has hit its peak. You're not worth my time." Enraged at being so utterly dismissed, Cockabeel let out a scream of pure fury and launched himself at Vali, his fists crackling with dark power. "I'll kill you," Vali sighed, a sound of profound weariness. As Cockabeel's fist flew toward his face, he simply raised a hand. "Divide." Cockabeel's power was instantly halved. Vali's own aura flared and he countered with a single, lazy punch. The impact was absolute. A shockwave tore through the air, and Cockabeel's body was sent hurtling back to the earth, crashing into the courtyard in a broken, unconscious heap. With the main threat neutralized, Vali drifted down, casually plucking the Excalibur fragments from the hands of the terrified and frozen freed Selzen. The battle was over, just like that. Vali Lucifer, the White Dragon Emperor, floated in the silent courtyard, holding the defeated Kadri and the stolen holy swords as if they were nothing more than groceries. The immediate threat was gone, but a far, far greater one had just announced its presence on the board. He looked up at Issei one last time. "Get stronger, Red Dragon Emperor," his voice echoed, not through the air, but directly in Issei's mind. "Surpass your limits, become a true dragon, someone actually worthy of being my rival." The unspoken threat hung in the air. "Or I'll come back and put you out of your misery myself." And with a final flash of blue light, he vanished, taking Cockabeel and the swords with him. The battlefield was left in stunned, absolute silence. Devils and exorcists alike stared at the empty sky, their minds struggling to comprehend the chasm of power they had just witnessed. Issei stood on the roof, his entire body trembling not from fear, but from a terrifying, exhilarating new purpose. The game he thought he was playing was just the tutorial level. The real rival had just put him on the clock. The silence that followed Volley's departure was more profound than any explosion. The immense, malevolent pressure of Cockabille's aura was gone, but in its place was a void filled with shock, confusion, and the lingering, terrifying memory of the White Dragon Emperor's power. The battle was over. They had survived. They had not won. On the ground, devils and exorcists stared at each other across the wrecked courtyard, the reasons for their fight suddenly feeling small and insignificant. That arrogant son of a bitch, DxD seethed in Issei's mind. Albion, always so theatrical. He didn't just defeat Cockabille, he rendered this entire conflict irrelevant. He made you all look like children fighting over a sandbox. Sona's voice, a blade of pure logic, cut through the dazed aftermath. Primary threat has been neutralized by an unsanctioned third party. The enemy's primary assets have been confiscated. Our mission is, by definition, complete. All units stand down but maintain defensive formation. Do not, I repeat, do not engage the church envoys. Her order was an anchor in the sea of chaos. But for the church envoys, there was no anchor left. Irina Shidu was sitting on the ground, her sword lying forgotten beside her, staring blankly at nothing. Her cheerful faith, the sun around which her entire universe revolved, had been extinguished. She was lost in the dark. Zenobia was in no better shape, though she hid it behind a mask of cold fury. Her mission was an abject failure. The holy swords were gone, taken by some unknown entity. The blasphemy she had heard, that God was dead, was given terrifying weight by the fact that no holy power had intervened to strike down Cockabille or the White Dragon. Her entire world, a rigid structure of faith and duty, was cracking at its foundations. Sona, flanked by Tsubaki, appeared on the battlefield via a shimmering teleportation circle. She assessed the situation with a quick clinical gaze, her eyes lingering on the two broken exorcists. Then she made a decision, not one of passion or pity, but of pure, cold-blooded strategy. She addressed the blue-haired girl directly. "Zenobia Quarta." Zenobia looked up, her hand tightening on the hilt of her sword, her eyes filled with suspicion. "Your mission has failed due to overwhelming third-party interference," Sona stated, as if reading a report. "Furthermore, your theological foundation has been critically compromised by new, unverified intelligence. You are in a strategically untenable position, deep in hostile territory, with a psychologically compromised partner." She pushed her glasses up. "I am offering you and your partner temporary quarter. A place to rest, debrief, and process the new data before you report the results of your mission to your superiors. This is not an act of charity. An unpredictable, desperate element on my territory is a liability. This is an offer to de-escalate a volatile situation and contain the variables." Zenobia stared at her, utterly speechless. A devil was offering her sanctuary. It was a sin, it was a trap. It was the only logical option she had left. She looked at Irina's vacant expression. Her partner was in no condition to fight, and certainly not to travel back to the Vatican to report their catastrophic failure. Swallowing a lifetime of dogma, a bitterness so profound it felt like poison, she gave a stiff, jerky nod. "We accept your offer of temporary sanctuary," she bit out. "But we are not your prisoners. The moment my partner is recovered, we will depart." "Acceptable terms," Sona replied without hesitation. As the strange, combined group began to withdraw, Issei walked over to where Irina was still sitting. Zenobia tensed, but Issei's face held no trace of triumph or malice, only a deep, painful sympathy. He knelt down in front of her, ignoring the fact that his demonic energy was probably an agony for her to be near. "Eerie," he said softly, using a childhood nickname she hadn't heard in a decade. He didn't know what to say, he couldn't fix her world, so he just offered the only thing he had left. It's going to be okay. We'll figure this out." He held out his hand. Irina looked at his offered hand, then up at his face. He was a devil, a creature she was sworn to destroy, but his eyes were the same as the goofy, kind boy she remembered. After a long, trembling moment, she slowly, hesitantly reached out and took his hand. The retreat to the student council room was a surreal affair. The Citri peerage, the Gremory peerage, an excommunicated nun. And now, two agents of the Holy Church. They were a collection of mortal enemies, all crowded into one room, survivors of a battle that had shattered the rules of their world. The old lines had been irrevocably blurred. The war they thought they were fighting was over. A new, far more terrifying one was just beginning. And Sona Citri, looking at the impossible, volatile collection of pieces she now had under her roof, was already calculating her opening moves. A fragile, deeply uneasy peace settled over the student council room. The Gremory peerage had departed, leaving the impossible assembly of Citri devils and church exorcists to coexist in the tense silence. Asia, with her boundless, unconditional kindness, took it upon herself to care for the still despondent Irina, bringing her tea and speaking to her in soft, comforting tones. Zenobia, however, was a statue carved from conflict. She spent a full day in silent, motionless contemplation, her mind a raging battlefield where a lifetime of faith warred with a single, devastating truth. Her mission had failed. Her God was dead. Her purpose was a lie. On the second day, she sought out Issei and Asia. She found them in the main club room, Issei trying to explain the concept of a video game to the perpetually confused nun. Zenobia didn't bother with pleasantries. "Explain your motivations," she demanded, her voice flat. Issei and Asia looked up, surprised. Zenovia's gaze was fixed on Asia. "You, the church cast you out, branded you a heretic. Yet you continue to show kindness even to your enemies. Why?" Asia looked down at her hands. I don't know about God anymore," she said softly. "But I know that people are hurting, and I can help them, so I do." "Isn't that enough of a reason?" Zenovia's eyes then shifted to Issei. "And you are a devil, a creature of sin and desire, yet you risked your life, the true death, to protect her. You fought to stop a war. It is illogical." "What drives you?" Issei was quiet for a moment, thinking. The old him would have said something about wanting a harem, but that felt shallow now, incomplete. "I don't have a god," he said, meeting her intense stare. "I have my friends. I have my team, my president. My purpose isn't something that was handed down to me from on high, it's them." He gestured around the room. "I fight to protect my people. It's that simple. Maybe a purpose isn't something you're given. Maybe it's something you choose. A new purpose, a chosen purpose." The words echoed in the desolate wasteland of Zenovia's faith. She saw a path forward. Her old world was gone and she could never go back to it. She needed a new one. She looked at the efficiency of the Citri peerage, their strength, their unity. It wasn't based on faith. It was based on logic, loyalty, and results. She stood up and walked directly to Sona's office. Sona looked up from her paperwork as Zenobia entered. "Zenobia Quarta, have you reached a conclusion?" "I have," Zenobia stated, her voice devoid of its earlier conflict. It was now cold, clear, and utterly resolute. "I can no longer serve a heaven that is empty or a church that clings to a lie. I am a sword without a master." She looked Sona directly in the eye. "I wish to offer my blade, my skills, and my life to you. I wish to become a devil. I want to join your peerage." Sona was, for once, visibly surprised. She leaned back in her chair, studying the former exorcist. "Your faith was the foundation of your entire existence. Without it, what drives you now?" "A new objective," Zenobia replied without hesitation. "Cockabeel was one threat. The White Dragon Emperor is another. This world is filled with chaotic forces that threaten the innocent. Your organization is the most logical and effective instrument to combat those threats. I seek strength and I seek a purpose. You can provide me with both." Sona was silent for a long moment, calculating. A former holy sword wielder, a battle-hardened veteran with immense potential and a new, results-driven philosophy. The strategic value was undeniable. "A logical and mutually beneficial proposition," Sona concluded, a rare, thin smile touching her lips. "Very well, Zenobia Quarta, your terms are accepted." She produced a gleaming, red knight piece. The reincarnation was quick, almost businesslike. As the demonic energy settled into her, Zenobia didn't feel horror or loss. She felt reforged. That evening, Irina finally made her decision. She could not stay. She needed to go back to find her own answers within the church. The farewell with Issei was quiet and sad. "Be careful, Iskun," she said, her voice still fragile. "You too, Iri," he replied. After she had gone, the newly constituted Citri peerage assembled. Zenobia stood among them, now a devil, her presence a powerful, if jarring, addition. Suddenly, a formal, high-priority communications circle flared to life on Sona's desk. It was the crest of the four great Satans. She listened intently, her expression growing more grave with each passing second. She ended the call and turned to face her team, her face grim. "The events here in Kuo have sent shockwaves through all three factions," she announced. "The appearance of the White Dragon Emperor and the confirmation of Cockabeel's treason have forced their hands. Surzech Lucifer, Michael the Archangel, and the fallen angel Governor Azazel have agreed to hold an emergency peace summit." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. "They intend to form a historic alliance against these new threats, and they have chosen Kuo Academy as the neutral ground for this meeting." She looked at each of them, her gaze finally resting on Issei. "The entire world is coming to our doorstep. Get ready." The weight of Sona's final words settled over the room like a shroud, a peace summit. Here, the beings whose names were whispered in hushed, fearful tones throughout the underworld, the leaders of all creation, were coming to their school. Saji Genshuru looked like he was about to have a panic attack. Lord Surzech, the Archangel Michael, here, in our gym, are you fucking kidding me? Panic is an inefficient allocation of emotional resources, Saji, Sona said, her voice cutting through his hysteria. We do not have the luxury of time for it. We have a task, and we will execute it with flawless precision. Her calm was infectious, a steadying force in the whirlwind of their shock. Due to the Citri clan's established reputation for logistical and administrative excellence, I have been appointed as the head of security and arrangements for the summit. This is the single greatest political responsibility our house has ever been given. We will not fail. Her eyes swept over her peerage, a general assigning roles before the most important battle of their lives. Tsubaki, you are my second. Coordinate all personnel patrols. Zenobia, she said, turning to her newest knight. Your experience as an agent of the church is now your most valuable asset. Analyze our defensive grid from an angel's perspective. Identify every weakness, every blind spot they would exploit. I want a full report by morning. Zenobia, who had been adrift without a mission, straightened up, a new fire of purpose in her eyes. Understood, Commander, Sona continued, her commands sharp and precise. Asia was to run a mobile aid station. Saji and the others were to perform a final, deep magical sweep of the entire town. Then she looked at Issei. Issei Hyodo, you are a unique variable. Your presence as the Red Dragon Emperor is a powerful deterrent. You are also the most likely target for any hostile party wishing to disrupt this summit. Therefore, your role is twofold. You will serve as a primary rapid response unit, and you will act as my personal attaché in all high-level security briefings. You need to understand the political landscape you now inhabit. Before Issei could even process the promotion, a Gremory teleportation circle blazed to life. Rias and her peerage stepped through. She looked at Sona, her expression serious and professional. My brother has briefed me, Rias said, her voice formal. The Gremory peerage is at your disposal, Commander Citri. Acknowledged, Gremory-san, Sona replied, giving a curt nod. Your team will be integrated into the southern sector's defensive perimeter. Tsubaki will provide you with the schematics. The next 24 hours were a blur of intense, focused work. Issei had never seen anything like it. The two peerages, once rivals, worked with a seamless, unified purpose under Sona's command. Amidst the high-stakes preparations, Issei stood guard at the main gate, trying his best to look stoic and professional. His attempt was completely shattered when Rias walked by, a playful, devastating smile on her face. My, Issei-kun, she purred, leaning close. You look so handsome and serious playing the soldier. Are you trying to protect little old me? He sputtered, his face immediately flushing crimson, his professional demeanor crumbling into dust. From a second-story window, Tsubaki watched the exchange and sighed, shaking her head. As evening fell, the preparations were complete. The school was quiet, encased in a web of powerful defensive wards. Issei stood with Sona, Rias, and the others near the main entrance, waiting. Right on schedule, a massive, intricate magic circle, unlike any devil crest Issei had ever seen, appeared in the sky. It was a complex pattern of black, silver, and gold. A delegation of a dozen figures teleported onto the school grounds. They were fallen angels, their black wings and dissident auras a stark contrast to the devil's energy. At their head was a man who looked less like a faction leader and more like a laid-back, slightly hungover rock star. He had long black hair with blonde bangs, a scruffy beard, and was dressed in a casual trench coat. He yawned, stretching his arms. His eyes, sharp and incredibly ancient, scanned the assembled group. They passed over Rias, the famed sister of a Satan. They passed over Sona, the tactical genius and hostess of the event. They landed directly and with an almost predatory intensity on Issei. The man's lazy demeanor vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated academic fascination. He grinned, walking past everyone else and stopping directly in front of a stunned Issei. Well, I'll be damned, the man said, his voice filled with a cheerful curiosity that was somehow more intimidating than any threat. Boosted gear. And you've already managed a stable, if incomplete, balance breaker. Fascinating. He leaned in close, his eyes studying the lingering draconic aura around Issei's arm. The name's Azazel Kid, Governor of the Fallen Angels. He clapped Issei on the shoulder with a surprising familiarity. I'm a huge fan of your work, we have got to talk. Issei stood frozen, face to face with the legendary leader of the fallen angels, who seemed far more interested in his sacred gear than the world-changing peace treaty he was here to sign. The summit hadn't even officially started, and Issei was already in way over his head. Azazel's grin was a mixture of a kid in a candy store and a scientist who just discovered a new element. He completely ignored the assembled devil nobility, his entire focus a laser beam aimed at Issei. "So how many times can you boost before you hit stamina failure?" he asked, his questions coming in a rapid-fire burst. "Is the 10-second interval a hard biological limit, or can it be shortened with training? What's DxD's current disposition? Is he still a grumpy old bastard?" "This fallen crow was always a nosy little shit," DxD's voice grumbled in Issei's head. "Tell him to piss off and mind his own business, partner." He says hi," Issei managed, completely out of his depth. Sona finally stepped forward, placing herself between the fallen angel governor and her pawn. "Governor Azazel," she said, her voice polite but firm. "While I'm sure my subordinate would be happy to contribute to your research at a later date, we have a summit to attend." Before Azazel could protest, a new presence washed over the school grounds. It was a gentle, golden light, emanating a feeling of such profound peace and serenity that it made the devil's skin crawl. From the light emerged the Archangel Michael, flanked by his own guards. And among them, in her white exorcist robes, was Irina, her expression conflicted and sad as her eyes met Issei's across the courtyard. The welcoming party was completed moments later by the arrival of the devil's own leaders. A crimson gremmery circle deposited Surzech's Lucifer, whose calm, immense power silenced all chatter, and his fellow Satan, Seraphal Leviathan. Seraphal, a whirlwind of pink sparkles and magical girl energy, took one look at the scene, let out a high-pitched squeal, and glomped her younger sister. "Sonata-an, you're doing such a great job." Her eyes then found Issei. "Ooh, and you must be the little dragon who's been keeping my Sona-chan so busy. You're even cuter than she described in her reports." Issei felt his soul trying to leave his body from sheer embarrassment. Sona's face was a rare, fascinating shade of mortified fury. Soon, Issei found himself escorted into the most terrifying room he'd ever been in. A secure conference chamber, with Michael, Surzech, and Azazel seated at a round table. He was there as the Red Dragon Emperor, a living, breathing symbol of the power they hoped to bring into their alliance. Before he entered, Sona gave him a final, sharp briefing. "Do not speak unless you are directly addressed. Do not offer opinions, do not move. Your function in this room is to exist and project an aura of power. Do you understand, Issei?" "Yes, President," he said, feeling like a kid on his first day of school. The meeting began. The three leaders, beings of immense and ancient power, spoke with a tense but determined civility. They discussed the threat of the Chaos Brigade, the organization that the White Dragon Emperor was apparently affiliated with. Azazel, true to his nature, was brutally candid. "Vali is my problem, I admit it. He's the strongest White Dragon Emperor in history, and he does whatever the hell he wants. I can't control him, but if we work together, maybe we can aim him in the right direction." Michael's expression was sorrowful as he addressed the other elephant in the room. "What Cockabeel said, it is the truth. My father, the god of the Bible, perished in the last great war. We have kept this secret for millennia to prevent the collapse of faith and the chaos that would follow." In the corner of the room, Irina, standing guard, flinched as if struck, the final nail being driven into the coffin of her faith. The leaders debated, their words shaping the future of the world. Issei tried his best to look powerful and stoic, but he was starting to lose focus. When Azazel mentioned Vali's arrogant attitude, Issei, forgetting himself for a moment, muttered, "Yeah, he was a total asshole." The entire room went silent. The Archangel Michael, the great Satan Surzech's Lucifer, and the fallen angel governor Azazel all turned to stare at him. Issei felt a sharp, stabbing pain in his shin from a well-aimed kick delivered by Sona under the table. Just as Surzech was about to smoothly redirect the conversation, the entire building shuddered violently. A deafening, screeching alarm began to blare, and the defensive wards Sona had erected flared into view outside the windows, flickering under a sustained, brutal assault. Issei's calm crackled to life, Sona's voice cutting through the chaos, no longer calm but sharp and urgent. "Commander, to all units, we have a massive, coordinated magical attack on the perimeter from multiple vectors. The main barrier is fluctuating, they're trying to breach the school grounds. The summit is under direct attack." The leaders of the three factions rose as one, their expressions grim. The peace talks were over. The war had just come crashing through their door. And that is a wrap on part 3. Holy shit, let's recap the absolute chaos we just witnessed. The mission to stop Cockabeel was a success, but our heroes didn't even get the final kill. That honor went to the brand new big bad, Vali Lucifer, the white dragon emperor who showed up, effortlessly bitch-slapped a Cadre-class fallen angel, and basically told Issei to get good or get dead. A terrifying new rival has officially entered the game, and the clock is ticking. In the fallout, Zenobia Quarta, her entire world shattered by the news that God is dead, found a new purpose and has been reforged as a devil, now serving as Sona's second knight. Issei's childhood friend, Irina, is broken by the same revelation, leaving our hero with a personal stake in a war that just got a whole lot bigger. But the most important development, Issei used his fucking head. He wasn't just a battering ram, he was a strategist who outthought the enemy, earning a new level of respect from his team, his master, and himself. The battle for Kuo is over, but the consequences are just beginning. The leaders of the angels, fallen angels and devils, spooked by the Chaos Brigade and the appearance of the two heavenly dragons, have called for an emergency peace summit right on our hero's home turf. Can Sona's security plan hold up when the whole world is watching? What happens when the most powerful beings in existence gather in one place, with a target painted on their backs? Find out in Part 4, where the politics get deadly and the Chaos Brigade decides to crash the party. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because you're not gonna want to miss what comes next.